I think my dad bought me a PC when I was 6 years old. I mean, he bought a PC for the family, but obviously I ended up using it. And I think the first memory that I have related to technology is that I was playing Doom, one of the first shooters. And I remember that if you would get hit, the little face on the bottom of the screen would get a bit bloody. And I was 6 years old or something like that at the time. And I remember that I never wanted to get hit because I knew that if I went under like 25% health or something, his face would be super bloody and I would have nightmares that night. So my whole thing was don't get under 25% health or else you'll have nightmares. I think that's my first contact with technology, modern technology at least. But starting from there, I kind of went through the normal process. I think I had my first smartphone was like one of those pseudo Nokia smartphones when I was in high school, I guess. Then slowly shifted towards modern age consumerism with modern laptops, iPhones, you name it. But I think yeah, that was the beginning of it. I never did. I still don't. I mean, it's a surprise for me as well. It's like I take it one day at a time. Sometimes it's a good surprise, sometimes it's a bad surprise. It's been mostly good surprises if I think about it now. But yeah, I never knew this is what I was going to do. Like, I never knew initially when I entered the workforce. I never knew I was going to do advertising and marketing. Like it was just there because of my dad, so it was convenient, and that's I guess why I chose it. But I never felt strongly about it. I never, woke up in the morning and said, "Oh my God, another day in advertising. I'm so happy to be here." It was never that. And I think it went the same way with being an entrepreneur. It's not like I was waking up every day being like, oh, another day where I have to go to the office and be a slave for someone else. I wish I was free. It didn't feel like that. I was just curious about it. And at some point there was an opportunity that sounded and eventually was too good to say no to. And I think that's why I jumped ship. I always say, so when I switched from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, I was at vola.ro, and I remember I was super happy there. Like I was extremely happy. And I remember going to Danny and telling him, this is a really tough choice. For me, it's like having to choose between my biological child and my adopted child. And thankfully, he was wiser than I am and said, no, you have to go, or else you're going to hate yourself forever. You will stop being productive, and I'll have no reason to pay you anymore. So you have to go and start your own business. I think it was super early in my career. Probably, I mean, I'm sure I heard about it before, but the moment in which I actually made the connection in my mind, oh, this is a startup, this is what the point is. The point is that it can scale really well, blah, blah, blah. I think it was with Facebook pretty much. So it was, and when Facebook became really popular in Romania, I think that was like 2010-ish. And that was my first year of being employed as well. So it's been 13 years now. I was 19 at the time, or 18. I think I just turned 19. So I wasn't really paying attention to, the startup space, funding and all that. So that's when Facebook became a thing and I started to learn more about social media marketing. That's where the connection came in. Oh, this is a startup. So it means they can do a lot of stuff with not a lot of people. Well, like I said, it wasn't something that we were waiting to happen. It's the, I guess, age-old story of having a problem and, building a business to fix your own problem. So I remember me and my co-founder were working on a totally different project. It was something pretty similar with Flipboard, sorry, with Flipboard. and we wanted to promote it on a billboard. So we talked to the landlord, and the landlord told us, oh, you can't just buy a few hours. That's not how it works. I don't have the infrastructure to sell it to you. And just the fact that I'm picking up the phone and talking to you is costing me more than whatever I would ask you for, 2 hours of advertising. And then we started researching the market, and we realized, hey, this is an actual huge opportunity. For me, it was very similar to what Google did with Google AdSense back in the day. So they standardized, banner advertising on local publications. And the aha moment was like, hey, if this is a problem everywhere in the world, we could become the ones that, standardize the hourly buying on local billboards, not publishers, right? And of course, if you still want a long-term deal, if you want a special project, you still go to the local publisher. But if you want something standard and you know exactly what you want, you have a platform where you go and do all that. And yeah, that was the first, that was the beginning of the idea. It remained an idea for a very long time. Like, we didn't fully commit to it. I think we first had the idea in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And it became it was only an idea, but it became a business in 2018. Like, until then, it was just something we would talk about, think about, maybe do some work around it, but it didn't become an actual business until 2018. So it's been a long time in the making. I think the market wasn't there. The market wasn't there yet. So the out-of-home market is a very old-school market. Like, it's an industry that has been around for over 100 years. So it's not very fast to innovate, and especially in Romania, which is slower than other markets. But even in the US, like, the things we were talking about and we wanted to do in like 2012 are now happening in the US. And it's not because, oh, we were so forward thinking or anything. It was just because it was obvious that's the right path for the industry to evolve. But the stakeholders just, wanted to hold on for as much as possible to the status quo. It's the same thing that happened with print back in the day. It was obvious things were going to change, but they tried to stand their ground for as long as possible. So the same thing happened here. It just took like 5 years for most of the traditional things to crumble and make way for technology, for programmatic, for startups like us. And then it was the right time for us to do it, because we learned that, you can have a brilliant idea, but you need to have brilliant timing as well. So it's not just about the idea, it's about execution, obviously, but it's about timing as well. It's I always forget how you what the phrase is in English, but um, it's like being a tailor without a suit. So we're really good at doing at branding for others and at marketing for others, but we're pretty bad at doing the branding part, at least for ourselves. So we initially started with the name the Pole Society. The idea was that the pole was the first form of outdoor advertising. You would put things on a pole, you would put posters, you would put print, essentially, formats to advertise whatever. And the idea initially was to have a mobile app that was like an endless pole that you would just swipe, and it would keep spinning, and it will show you different posters. I know now that that's a UX nightmare, but at that point in time, it seemed interesting. So we started off with that. The pole.com was taken, so we had to give it a twist, and we called it the Pole Society, in the idea that it's a community, it's a place where more people come and join. When we got into Techstars, Techstars was super traditional, and they told us, look, guys, you need to rebrand. Like, there's two problems with the name. The first problem is that it sounds like you're Polish, the pole. And the second we don't want to talk about, because you know what the second problem is. And the second problem is it sounds like you're a bar on the Las Vegas Strip. So let's talk about changing the name. And we thought a bit about the name. We didn't find anything better. It's similar to the Virgin Airlines story, where Richard Branson said, if I don't find a better name, I'm just gonna call it Virgin. And we were in the same situation. We never found a good enough name. So we just said, let's just turn it into an acronym. And the Pole Society became TPS Engage. Engage was the name of the platform because we wanted to name it Engage. And we just said, call it TPS Engage. And it's an acronym, it's very techy, it's fine. We can live with it until we find something better. And we lived with it for like 4 years until finally we felt like, okay, we've developed the product enough. We're happy with where the product is. We're happy with our product market fit, with our marketing, with everything. It's time to find a name that we like and that is more consumer focused, because for us, the whole platform is about the long tail and it's about people, hopping on the platform and doing everything themselves. So you need a friendly name for that. So that's how we were brainstorming with a friend of ours in New York, a Romanian as well. And he came up with the idea that we should call it Blindspot. And it's been Blindspot since June 2021, I think. Yeah, 2022. It's been a year, yeah. It really depends on the stage the startup is in. For us, it made sense at the time. It was a good experience. First of all, it forced all of us to quit what we were doing day to day and stop treating this as a side project and actually commit to it as a business. So sometimes an accelerator can help with that kind of stuff. It didn't. It gave us a bit of clarity and focus. The fact that we had to go to Dubai and we had to spend 3 to 6 months there and put everything in order. It did have, I think we had a bit too high expectations in some regards. Like we imagined that for us it was, we get into Techstars and then everything is set, as long as we don't do something extremely stupid, we're fine. But it's not necessarily like that, right? So the fact that we got into Techstars made it a bit easier for us to have some conversations, but it wasn't a guarantee of success. So my only recommendation to startups is don't think that the accelerator is the moment you get in is when the work actually starts. It's not when the work ends. So for us, I think we were a bit naive when it came to that. We were super young as well. It has really good parts if this is your first business. I recommend it to first-time entrepreneurs. If I would, when I will start the second business, whenever that will be, and I'll be the famous serial entrepreneur, I don't think I'll go for an accelerator program again. But that's just because I've already went through one. So I recommend everyone should try it at least once, but then they'll figure out if it makes sense for them to do it more than once. I felt like we started different businesses in every country. Obviously, it was the same business, but the experience was very different. So, first of all, when we went from Romania to Dubai, that was our first contact with us having to pitch an international business, and we didn't have any experience with that at that point, apart from working for other clients, but I mean actually building a business. Then South Korea was a really interesting experience in terms of coming into a major market as a startup without major funding, right? So if you're on the heels of a 100 million plus fundraise, you're not a startup anymore, at least in the eyes of the local players. So it was an interesting experience because we really had to hustle a lot. The fact that we were Romanian, unfortunately, didn't really help. Both in Seoul and in New York and in Miami. But in time, I think we kind of managed to get over it and just play to our strengths and be like, okay, this is who we are. We're comfortable with who we are. If you want our type of product and our type of service and our type of style when it comes to, and this is both for fundraising and for business, right? Sometimes in fundraising, we realized we were a bit too conservative in terms of estimates and in terms of anything like that, because I guess a lot of Romanians that I've met feel a bit feel a bit like they are overwhelmed. When they go in the US, they feel like they are the minority, but they feel a bit inferior. And we felt the same way initially, and we were like, oh, these guys are so cool. These guys are based in New York. These guys are based in Seoul. And in time, I realized although obviously there are people who are exceptional in each of these markets and there are people who are exceptional in Romania, the majority of them are still pretty bad at what they do, but they just sell themselves way better. Like the US is a perfect example. I met people initially when I moved to New York. I was super overwhelmed and I was under the impression that everyone knew the business better than I did. And after a while, I just realized, no, these guys are just faking it really well. I'm just being more sincere about, my level of knowledge. And I was like, okay, then I can do this. If that's the only problem, let's switch up the game. So I guess it's an experience in the sense that you really get to know yourself and you need to figure out who you really are. Like some people will adapt to the local game and say, okay, if this is the way the game is played in New York or in Miami or in Seoul or in Dubai, I'll have to play that game. Or some people will say, okay, I understand how the game is played. I want to play it differently, but I'm aware of it. In order to do something differently, you need to understand the way it's properly done. So I think that's what we did. We are not that good at playing a traditional game, but we needed to first understand what the rules of the traditional game is, because then we can come in and say, okay, we know this is how you play the game, but here's how we want to play the game. So that gave me a lot of confidence in the sense that we know that no matter what happens, we can figure something out. We went through the pandemic when no one was going outside and no one cared about billboards because nobody was outside. And we managed to get on the other side of that as a business, So I guess that gave us the confidence of knowing that we can figure out any market given the right amount of time and resources. I think that's the main reason, because we always had new stuff coming in, and I think that's how we kept motivated. I feel motivation disappears or is lacking when you have to do the same thing over and over again and you don't necessarily see progress. For us, we've seen a lot of progress over the past 5 years. We've had ups and downs like any startup. But I guess the fact that we changed the region we were working in a lot gave us enthusiasm and motivation to keep going. I personally think I would also go crazy if I didn't do any type of sport. So for me personally, this is just me. I don't know about my other colleagues, but I feel that having physical activity kept me sane, especially during the pandemic, but even now. Like without physical activity, I think I would just stay in front of the laptop 24/7, and at some point I would say, you know what, I would rather not be alive than do this. So it's easy to suddenly lose motivation. But I think every motivated entrepreneur that I've met here in Romania, in the US, in Seoul, is just really a really curious person, and they just like to find out new stuff. And I think I'm the same way. And my co-founders and my colleagues are the same way. Like they're just genuinely enthusiastic when they hear a new idea. If it sounds exciting, they'll be like, oh, let's try it out. I want to see if this works. Maybe it won't, but just the process itself is exciting. From my experience, close to none. And but I would even say that that was okay. That was super early on in the industry, but that was even after we started the company. So even after 2018, I think there's been a major shift in Romania after UiPath in terms of mentality. First of all, it's not necessarily because of money putting in, which obviously is happening and it's never a problem. But I feel that even, for example, we initially wanted to do fundraising from Romania because we felt, hey, we have a connection here, we're Romanians. We wanted to have the perspective of being a local company that is started here and funded here and has international success. But at that point in time, and I mean like 2019-ish, we were talking to VCs here who we realized really fast knew significantly less than we did about fundraising and about the VC world. I'm sure this has changed in the meantime, but back then it was basically a glorified version of European funds, right? So we would be talking to people and we realized These investors didn't actually want to be venture capitalists. They just wanted to pour some money into you and then act like kind of glorified CEOs, which is a very wrong approach for a startup. Thankfully, I think that stage only lasted a year or two in the industry. And with UiPath, there's been like a super accelerated maturity of the industry with more and more funds from the region looking at Romania, the ones in Poland, the ones in Hungary, the ones in Bulgaria, so I think that has forced these types of local hustlers / players to kind of disappear pretty fast. So I'm honestly impressed by how much the industry has evolved in terms of the VC world in Romania in the past 2 or 3 years. Well, it was a lot about educating ourselves, honestly. It's tough to say. I think it would have been easier to start a company if we weren't Romanian, and especially a startup, a tech startup, if we were American, let's say, for the sake of the example. But I also think the fact that we were Romanian gave us the opportunity to build this startup, simply because what we're doing requires a lot of scrappiness and a lot of figuring stuff out along the way, and not necessarily just by throwing money at the problem, right? Because the American version of startups is raise a lot of money and then just throw money at the problem until the problem is solved. And sometimes that happens to be a problem that can be solved, like Terranos or whatever else. Sometimes that's a problem that can be solved and it's just, okay, I have more money than the competition, I'm going to figure it out eventually. Our problem is not one that, our industry's problem, and I mean specifically Blindspot here, it's not one where you can just take $1 billion and throw it at it and it'll get solved eventually. It takes a lot of education, it takes a lot of changing mindsets, it takes a lot of managing stakeholders, so it's something that cannot be fixed. And I think if we didn't have the Romanian mentality of figuring stuff out, and I'm sure Romanians watching this will know what I mean, I don't think we would have done it. I think we've either would have failed really early on, or we would have just said, nah, we're not going to do this. It's way too complicated. Let's find something simpler. So in a sense, it was tougher, but because we are Romanian, and obviously going abroad and, having an Eastern European accent and not knowing the local market and not having connections in the market obviously made it tougher for us. But I think some of the culture that we got from here helped us a lot. And I want to say one more thing. It's really funny when we first moved to New York, when I first moved to New York, I remember New Yorkers would tell me, hey, New York is super rough, and New York is super rough in the sense that we're not polite, we're aggressive, we tell it as it is, we're not politically correct. And I was like, this is paradise. This is who I am. You are my people. And I started being very straightforward and very non-politically correct and very, open. And people were like, chill. Like, this is too much. And then I realized, oh, you mean in comparison to the West Coast, you are super rude and straightforward. In comparison to Eastern Europe, you are still extremely politically correct and polite. Okay, I get it. And then I had to adjust everything. So I think being Romanian helped in that sense, because otherwise maybe New York would have seemed too tough for me, I think they're super multidisciplinary in the sense that they know they have to do a lot of stuff. Sometimes maybe founders from other markets try to be hyper specialized, whereas I think Romanians understand that, especially in a young business, you end up doing everything. So I think that helps. I think they're way scrappier because we aren't used to having, it's not easy to find resources, so we don't have the mentality that, it's the first time I heard this, I was like, what world do these people live in? It's the famous friends and family round, where you can raise a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars from friends and family. And when I first heard that, was like, what kind of friends and family do these people have? Like, I cannot raise $200,000 from my friends and family for my business. That's like the whole inheritance if they sell their apartments and everything.
So I think the fact that we're more scrappy helps us. At the same time, it might be a problem in certain situations. If it's an industry where you have to raise a lot of money really fast, you might just not have the mindset for it. So I think that's why there are only a few people who can raise significant amount of money for Romanian based businesses, simply because they kind of have to forget everything they know about being scrappy and being efficient with their capital. So I think that's the good part, and the bad part is that I think they're a bit gullible sometimes, and they're especially gullible to what seems like international success. So a lot of the time, I see people looking at even success like ours, and thinking that we have some kind of golden key, and we're able to tell them that one piece of advice that will change everything for them. And honestly, I realized that if I wanted, and these people can be easily manipulated. So if I wanted to manipulate them, and if I wanted to be like, buy my course where I can tell you the future of starting a successful business internationally, I think a lot of people would jump on that opportunity. So I think they need to be a bit more work a bit on their on on the information that they get, in the sense that they need to be a bit more strict with the sources, and they need to be a bit more aware that nobody has a secret formula. A lot of almost everyone is winging it, and they're figuring it out on the go. And I think American entrepreneurs know this, but Romanian entrepreneurs haven't figured that part yet, that part out yet. I think that's definitely part of it, but I think that it's also the fact that not a lot of people have tried to do their own business, not to mention startups. So it's kind of a romanced version of it. It's like, oh, look at Mark Zuckerberg. He started his business at 20 years old, and now he's a billionaire 2 years later. Or Bill Gates, oh, they just managed to do this, and nobody explains the context, right? Because these types of all the biographies that you read and all the stories that you read about the top 10 most famous founders, they leave some crucial information out, or they present it as being not important. Bill Gates is the example I love the most. Again, being a super successful entrepreneur, and I have a lot of respect for what he's built and for the company that Microsoft is today. But when a lot of people tell his story, they forget to mention the fact that they managed to get a huge deal with IBM was because his mom was on the board of directors at IBM. So that's kind of a crucial, when building a company, figuring it out that if you're building a tech company and your mom is on the board of a major tech conglomerate, that's probably gonna help. As Romanians, we don't usually have that connection, So I'm not in the position to say, oh yeah, I started building a billboard company because my dad is on the board of JC Deco, So obviously the connection was there. We didn't have that. So I think obviously that doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that you can just build whatever company you want if your dad or mom or uncle or whatever is in a good position. But all these things need to line up. And I think that once people are a bit more aware and once they've tried it themselves, I think they just need to try it once and they'll figure it out. And when that happens, they'll see that it's not as easy as they think to just build an e-commerce business. And I think that's why there's so many self-made billionaires and self-made courses about how to start your own business, how to sell courses online, how to do drop shipping, how to do this and that. And a lot of the people who fall prey for that, it's their first business, because after you do it once and you realize how complicated it really is, then you become a bit more aware about that, and you're a bit more cautious about everything. So I think they just need to do it once. They need to fail once, and after you failed once, hopefully without burning a lot of money, then you'll kind of realize what's bullshit and what isn't. Oh, I think we would have definitely closed the company by now if we stayed in Romania. Not just because we couldn't have been efficient in terms of doing business. We still do a lot of business in Romania, but it's just I think we would have just gotten tired of all the local, because in Romania, at least our business has to be kind of a service-based business. So most of the industry doesn't really isn't really comfortable with self-service, whereas in the US they want that type of stuff. They will want it in Romania as well, but it'll take 5 more years. And at that point, we would have probably said, okay, we don't have the patience to wait for this. So it doesn't make sense for us to just wait until the timing is right. We just probably say, let's park this, start a different business, and when the timing is right, we can activate this business again. For us personally, yes, that doesn't mean that every business, is a perfect fit in the US. I think it is for us for a lot of reasons. From a technical perspective, because it's the most advanced place in terms of programmatic digital out of home, in terms of potential demand, in terms of the fact that the market is very familiar with self-service. For example, South Korea or Asia in general is not that self-service centered. It's very similar to Romania. They want kind of a white glove service where you talk to someone, you pick up the phone, you talk with your friend Matt, where you kind of negotiate and do all that, and we're like, okay, this is not the business that we want to be in. But the US is not like that. So specifically for us, US is a major market, Australia is a major market, the UK is a major market, which has very similar mindset. Western Europe is growing a lot as well, because demand is very diversified there, and because it's a fragmented market, having a self-service platform makes sense. And in the future, Asia as well, I hope. I'm a huge fan of that market, but I just think that it's still a bit old school in terms of the way they treat some services, because it's a very opaque market where they don't really like transparency. So when we come with a platform and we say, oh, everything is transparent, you can see pricing and everything, some of them will say, wait a minute, let's slow down. It's definitely improved. I think there are a lot of very capable and competent angels in the market. I still think some of the VCs, the way I've seen it, there are a few VCs that still act as European investment funds essentially, because that's where most of their money is from. So the problem is that instead of acting as their expertise is fundraising, and focusing on fundraising and giving money to founders and theoretically picking founders that know what to do with that money, they pick founders, they give them that money, and then they try to tell them what to do with that money, which again is a very different. The US-based investors will not do that. Even angels, if they're at the point in which they decide, I'm going to give you this money, they gave you the money and then they forget about it, because that's why they gave you the money, because they trust you. So all the money, it's honestly the experience we've had with fundraising here in Romania. It's been much more difficult to, and we have funds from Romania, but it's way more difficult to manage angels here, because some of them want a very active role in the company, which is not necessarily a problem. It's not like they don't deserve it, but it's like they want an active consultant role in the company. Because it's one thing to say, you know what, I like your company, I want to be involved in the day-to-day, and I'm going to come in here and I don't want a salary and I'm going to help you guys. And the other is, I just want you guys to hear my opinions all the time, which takes time. Obviously, usually you have to trust the founder that if the founder feels like they need help or they have a problem with strategy, they're going to come to you and they're going to ask you and say, look, I have this problem, give me your advice, because I know you're an expert on this. There are other funds though that have become a bit more self-aware. Thankfully, I heard, this is really recent, I heard for the first time, it started off a bit disappointing, but at the end of the conversation I was excited. So usually, especially in our industry is not very familiar. VCs are not very familiar with our industry because they don't really know marketing and advertising. They know tech, they know, SaaS models, ARR, stuff like that. When we get into advertising, they're kind of clueless most of the time. So we had a conversation recently with a VC that started talking about their opinions about the advertising market, about the about ad technology, about marketing, about Fortune 500 companies and how they spend their marketing budgets. And we were telling them your opinions are not correct. I mean, I'm hearing you, but from our experience, knowing what we know, being in the market for a long time, I can tell you that your opinions are not correct. You're seeing it from a different angle. You probably, maybe this is from former experience back in the day, but today the market doesn't work like this. And normally we would have this kind of, back and forth. But funny enough, at the end of the conversation, after having very strong opinions, the VC said, well, actually, I know nothing about this market. So, you know what? Let me consult with someone who knows the market and I'll circle back, which was fair, but in the US, if they don't know the market, they will say that up front. They won't try to have very strong opinions because they'll be like, I don't know this market. I either trust you or I need to find someone who knows the market and I'll talk to them and then I'll circle back and tell you what my opinion is. So I guess there's a bit of false confidence still in the market here, but thankfully that kind of washes away with time. Well, I can tell you two things. First, I think we're going to mostly be a copycat of what is popular in the US, and you can see this with what companies raised money here, right? When fintech was popular, you would have, fintech companies raising money and when AI is popular now, you see AI companies raising money. So I still think we're going to be kind of a lookalike market compared to what's happening at a smaller scale compared to what's happening in the US and other major markets. So this is what I think will happen. What I hope will happen is that we'll get some local diversity and we'll get some companies that actually try out new verticals, because we have a huge advantage. It's really easy to test things out in Romania. If we started our business in the US, we wouldn't have managed to get to this point with only basically 1.5 million raised, because otherwise it would have been way more expensive. And I think it's a great market where you can test industries out and see if they work. And I hope we become that kind of, test bed and become that kind of place where companies explore new stuff. And if they see, oh, there's a bit of product market fit here, we can maybe explore this, then they go to a bigger market and see if they can scale it out from there. Because I think that will make us stand out in the market, and we won't just be a smaller Poland, or a smaller whatever in the region. So one is what I think will happen, and the other is what I hope will happen. Yeah, because the market was way too small in Romania. So it would either have been a lifestyle business in Romania, and it had just been a business that generates, I don't know, at its peak a few $1 million, and it's profitable and everyone is living a good life. But it would have never been, something that we can significantly scale. And it would have been basically kind of a glorified agency, and we didn't want to build a glorified agency. We wanted to build an actual self-service tool, and in order to have enough demand to cover that, we needed to go international. So that was the idea starting off. Honestly, it's we're focusing a lot on the commercial side of things. We've figured out product market fit, so we're pretty good at generating demand. So we're generating a lot of demand here in Romania. We're generating demand in the US as well. Our major market is in the US, but funny enough, it's an interesting effect. The better the US is working, there's this Me Too reaction in Romania. Wherever we post something from the US, we get clients from Romania saying, "Wow, I want some campaigns too." Not necessarily in the US, even in Romania. So there is some, wishful thinking over there, and people who want to work with, successful US companies here in Romania. So our focus is on the commercial side. We will probably finish fundraising as well. We're pretty effective with our funds, in the sense that we're even profitable when we want to, so we don't necessarily have to, focus on, oh, I need to raise money because I have 2 months left. But we want to invest more in marketing and not be as scrappy. Like I said, we're really good at being scrappy, and sometimes that's a problem because we need to stop being scrappy and start, spending more aggressively. So hopefully in 2024 we've finished fundraising, and we can go really aggressive after a few markets rather than slowly building it up. We actually got offers, yeah, but we never seriously considered any of them. There was one that was like a significant sum, and it was a kind of situation where we had to stop for a second, and we all looked at each other and we were like, "This is a lot of money," and we all had at the same time the same reaction. No, we don't want to do it. No, let's keep. I would rather, even if it fails after 3 years later, after we got this offer, I'd be happier than taking this money and then, every night thinking, oh, what if I didn't take the money? What would have happened? Same thing when I switched from, Vola to Blindspot. If I didn't switch then, even if I was super happy at Vola, I would have always asked myself, oh, what if I went with the startup route, So I'm happy we didn't do it. Not really, no. Plan B was to probably either go back to Vola or go back to another company until I figure stuff out. If actually I'm just asking myself this now, but I don't know what I would do now, presuming a new pandemic hits and nobody goes outside anymore, and we're like, okay, nobody wants to buy billboards, this is a problem. I honestly don't know. I don't think I could go back to working in a company. I think I would have to start something new again. It's like drinking. I don't remember where I saw this, but it was this story about if you are ever offered the best wine in the world to taste it, don't taste it, because you won't be able to drink anything else after that. So this is kind of where I am now. On one side, I'm happy I tried out entrepreneurship. On the other hand, it's like I know I can never go back, so I always have to do this now. I don't think I get bored. I think the only reason I would not focus on Blindspot is if I felt the company has gotten to the point where my skills are, not as impactful anymore. Because I realize I'm really good at building companies up, but I might not be as good at operating them. It's kind of the Disney scenario. Okay, Walt Disney was really good at building it up, but then you needed a different type of person to operate it and to scale it from there. So the only reason would be, like, let's say 5 years from now, we've IPO'd and I realize that is not my world. That's not something that, I want to be. I don't think I would thrive in it. So I would probably say, okay, I'll stay on in a place that where my skills, have the best ROI, essentially. And if I have additional time, I'm just going to focus on other things at the same time. But other than that, I don't see myself doing anything else. I think it should be around, so I don't know the exact title, but I would brainstorm something around the hustle mentality, because I think Romanians actually invented the hustle mentality. We have the famous saying that I know a guy who can fix something. So I really think maybe something the birth land of the startup hustle mentality or something like this. I'll think about it though. I'll think more about it, and if I have a better one, I'll let you know.